All right, good morning. I'm with Ian Harris, CEO of Copper Giant CGNT on the TSX Venture. Copper Giant has news out this morning, but before we get into this morning's news, I want to go back in time about a month. Copper Giant expanded its land position there in Colombia. So let's get some more color from Ian as to what's going on there. So Ian, why expand the land position?
So I can tell you what we say in a press release, and then I can tell you about the motivations behind the closed doors, right? And the truth is, we have done such an amazing job, right? Working with the local community, establishing what I call the Copper Giant Way, which is what we learned in Ecuador, what we learned in Panama to get Mirador and Cobre Panama up and running, right? Is this incredible strength locally. But based on the success of Mocoa, that it's advancing and moving forward, I guess there's people that look for an opportunity. But you don't want other people walking around. They don't run by the same rules, right? I mean, the common one you see a lot is people go, we showed up to to our land and they ran us off. And I'm like, okay, well, wow, that's pretty funny. They're pretty nice people. And they go, yeah, they just ran us off. I was like, oh, but you talked to them beforehand and said, hey, can I walk through your backyard? And they go, oh, no, I didn't talk to anybody before showing up, right? So it's these little things that most of these, especially newer groups, they just don't get. They don't get that, before you walk through somebody's backyard, you probably should talk to them first and get them permission. So we didn't want anybody screwing up the goodwill. And because even if somebody else does something, then, NGOs can paint it as all are evil, all are bad. Here's a great example. And they like to paint with a very wide brush. So we didn't really want that. But there's also the very solid justification is after learning that Mocoa was at least a $10 million year fertile period, right? That this is a big system that was running for an extremely long time. So it's a generational district play, right? So we really understood in this. If you look at the same amount of area that was covered in Ecuador, you had Fruta del Norte, Mirador Norte, Pananza, San Carlos, and Morenza, right? Like those are some of the biggest projects and gold and copper in the world. So it can be very, very prolific, this zone. So we really just said, we better do it now before it causes this problem or it just becomes way too expensive, right? Because we also believe things will be changing soon, both in copper equities and also the perception of Colombia.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. Every time I talk with a junior in Colombia, the petro topic comes up and the fact that he's very unpopular and there's an election next year. So what is the mood in country, and how does petro sort of being a lame duck affect the mining industry in Colombia?
Well, I think there's a lot of people that are extremely bullish on Colombia, and there's a reason that Rio Tinto and Freeport McMoRan and everybody else is setting up a shop in Colombia because they're like, okay, we just need to get our house into order, get all ready because the boom is coming. I think there's a lot of anticipation of boom. And if you look at Aris's share price and you look at Collective Mining's share price, that there's also a lot of other people that believe in the same thing, and things are going extremely well. But we do have to recognize that we're coming into an electoral period. So, and this is the most unfortunate part, right? Is that market moves on perception, right? Not necessary action and policy, right? Because at the end of the day, there hasn't been a big impact to mining during the entire time of petro, and now really, and it's not maybe him that's partially a lame duck, but his minister of environment is gone, and minister of mines is gone. These ministers that are probably can be the most impactful are no longer there to cause issue, right? Especially when they're quasi politicians, right? Or thinking about, you had a minister of environment who wanted to be run for president, right? So this period I feel is over, but we are entering into elections, which means there's going to be a lot of chatter, right? There's going to be a lot of people, saber rattling, etc. in the near term, but you have to see through the news and see it in terms of what are the actions coming that are happening on the ground, right? And that's a bigger thing. And I would even go, in our case, we just announced yesterday, right? Mark Gibson becoming a part of our board, right? And Mark reached out directly. He is ex-COO of Cordoba Minerals, Ivanhoe Electric, and is in the very high tech group, especially in geophysics, out of Friedland's group, right? Very technical person, but was hugely instrumental in advancing the Cordoba Alacran project to get a permit for their PTO and get it really sold at this stage. And the biggest thing he said, I didn't want to leave Colombia. I know that this is going to be an amazing project. This is a project that's moving forward in Colombia, and I want to be a part of it and help do that, right? On a bigger scale than maybe at Alacran. Because he believes he's been here, he's got his boots on the ground, and he feels like the best is yet to come.
So let's talk about the news a couple of days ago, the management addition. So Mark Gibson is now executive chairman, so that's a big addition to the team. And my friend Edwin is VP of exploration. Tell us about the advancements in the company and these new additions.
Mark joined as director, and then so we still don't have a chair officially yet. But
I thought I read that. Okay.
I hope you didn't. That means I have a big error in my news release, and I better go read it really quick.
I just made up that there's a chairman now. Sorry.
Well, we're still we're obviously got the quality. It's just we're really small still to date, but you know, it's attracting more and more people that are understanding how great of a project is, right? So you also have Joey, who is got an extremely strong background in porphyries, and it's just come down on a site visit and been with Edwin to help guide. But the other part of it is that, you know, Edwin has done such an amazing job. You've interviewed him now a few times. There was big support out of the Fiore Group too, and you know that this was well deserved and well received. He's very articulate. I could see him running a future exploration junior mining company in one day. So, and he's done the legwork. Like he's the guy who did the aging and showed it, and it's extremely complex with all these multiple phases and coming up with the vectoring and taking a deeper understanding of this project and bringing it into, you know, he's the reason a lot of this talent is being attracted to the project because of the work that he's been doing and being able to demonstrate it, right? One thing is having it, the other is being able to articulate it and demonstrate it.
Yeah, so with Edwin, VPX is an important role in a junior explorer, and he has like the three key things. He has the knowledge, he has the solid background studying porphyry, studying this area of South America. He has the passion for the project,
yes,
and making new discoveries, and he's articulate. He can express key concepts to a wider audience. So I think he's perfect for Copper Giant as VPX. And obviously, it's no accident that once again I had a tongue slip a few months ago, and I called him VPX, and it happened, right?
Well, man, maybe you're predicting.
Yes, I mean, obviously, I can see the future sometimes. So one other piece of news from the company in the last month is you closed a substantial financing, $8.3 million. So tell us about the use of proceeds. So you've expanded your land position. Will some of that $8 million go to exploring these new areas, or are you just, you know, laser focused on the core project area?
No, adding the new land, one of the things that we will be doing when it's appropriate, obviously, is there is historical soils work and sediment sampling that has been done. So redoing some of that base work, right? But what the financing did, and we were really shocked about, you know, the level of interest, right? And we can go back into that, but it basically says we will easily now be able to finalize our drill program that we wanted to get done this year with 2 drills running until the end of the year, which is going to be, we should be able to easily get to 16, 17, 18. So we should be able to beat our target of 14,000 meters. And that is really going to be mostly focused because I'm trying to accomplish multiple things, right? A is we need to do an updated resource. The big reason is people keep thinking that Mocoa is the 600 million ton resource, and that it didn't understand that it was because it was inherited from B2 Gold. Evaluation had to be done, and a resource calculation was done, not because it was really anything was drilled out, so to speak. And there's another reason to motivation to get an updated resources, because I'd like to move as quickly as possible into at least a PEA, because we are going into elections. And I believe that the next guy coming in is going to want to see investment, want to see things advancing and be able to demonstrate growth. And I want to have at least a conceptual project to be able to discuss, not a dream or a hope, right? But something that is actually, you can demonstrate on paper. This is the potential that Mocoa has. I always talk about a triangle, which is the strength locally, reputation nationally, which drives political will. So we continually to work on that piece of the triangle, because that's how mines get built, right? And I would like to, there's only really been 5 or 6 big copper mines built in the last 10 years, right? And Ernie was with one and I was with another, right? So and they weren't in Canada, they weren't in the United States, they weren't in Chile, they weren't in Argentina, none of them, right? So we get a lot of grief, but it seems like it's a lot of armchair quarterbacking going on, right? But this is what it takes to get big projects moving forward, and we're building those building blocks and have a laser focused strategy on how to, or not laser focused, I said better, always focused on, because you're always dynamically adjusting your plan, but you have that vision to how does this become a future mine?
Okay, very good. Yeah, I like that thinking. How does this eventually transition to an operating mining operation in the future? That's very important to think in terms of that perspective. So now this morning's news, the stuff I like to talk about the most, the drill results. So hole 47, you got the full assays for the entire hole. A couple of surprises that I observed straight off the bat here. It was deeper. It was drilled deeper than was originally planned, 1,000 meters in total. That's a very deep hole. And it ended in 36 meters of more than 1% copper. So tell us about hole 47, Ian.
Well, start off with, I wish it was deeper, right? We unfortunately it came up a wedge. It was they saved a hole. They had some problems with some stuck steel, so they ended up wedging, and then of course that wedge gets to the limit. You just couldn't drill any deeper. We've gone down about 1,300 meters with this drill that we have on site, and we could actually bring in a bigger one day if we wanted to go even deeper. But we hit this this potassic alteration rock at the very end, and we're like, this is exciting. And then all of a sudden we're seeing all these little veinlets. But what was interesting, it was also a very early stage pulse of, this thing has been pulsing over 10 million years. And there's a slide in our deck that I love that shows this was the first, this is the second, third, and at the end you might have brecciation, where it gets more and more complex, right? But that complexity remobilizes things. The moly sometimes upgraded, and then if you got a breccia, you could get into the higher grade. About 40% of the deposit to date is higher grade, right? So we have the what you want. You have a disseminated porphyry, which maintains grade throughout, and then you have these higher grade pockets. But to date, all of those have been in breccia. And so the reason we extended the hole was because we were in a true porphyry section of the hole, which was running about 0.5% copper only. And that's really high for a porphyry unit. So we were like, hey, we're hitting a new phase of something that we need to vector into the future, understand how we could find more of this, right? And then all of a sudden at the bottom of the hole, you find an early stage porphyry that's also high grade. So it's extremely exciting because the more pathways you have to higher grade material, the better, right? But then the intrigue is, oh my goodness, are we getting closer to something, right? Because as you're getting deeper and you're seeing higher grades and in porphyry again, right? It's so you're seeing an upgrade in copper grades in the host rock, right? Not in a supergene where you have had some sort of an enrichment like a breccia or something like that, where a concentrated mineralization, right? So supergene is the incorrect term, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, hypogene enrichment.
And so yeah, so it's that normally implies the type of mineralization, right? But this was still, just a very dense chalcopyrite. But it says, hey, we might actually be getting close to something. Don't remember, Filo was a pretty boring project. I would say way more boring than what it looks like at the surface of Mocoa. Way more boring, right? Until they got and found their feeder zone. So, it's still a complex story, but complex in this case is better, right? The complexity adds to the richness of the deposit.
So at the bottom of hole 47, what I hear you saying is that this is still chalcopyrite. It's just a very dense assemblage of chalcopyrite. You're not seeing much, of the bornite or chalcocite there?
No, it was veinless. So it was A-type veining. So, it's earlier stage, right? And it's highly disseminated chalcopyrite, right? So it was 0.64. So that's pretty dense. Just that's copper only. And also crazy, it was 0.1% moly, right? Which is extremely high.
So the moly, so you're really in the potassic there. You're really in the core of the system there if the moly is kicking up that high.
Yes, but it also says how rich this early stages were of this project, right? That potentially these early stages really pumped a massive amount, and it probably helps explain why the moly percents are so high, because the moly really doesn't remobilize. It just kind of, but from the very beginning, it was a very, very high content of moly. So I look forward to watching the team interpret and continue to find these vectors, because we're going to be doing two things, right? One is, and we want to take some aggressive step outs. We have hole 48, which I think should be coming out soon too. I think everything is now gone to lab on hole 48, but hole 48 was more another, what I call these backbone holes, where we're going into a new area and we want to understand the overall geology and use these footprints that we have on the existing deposit to be able to reapply right into areas. So again, it was mostly for geology, but we've already turned now and we're on to hole 48 and 50, right? So we're continuing to go strong to a combination of larger step outs, infill, with a goal of trying to be aggressive but focused on doing a resource update because of the story I explained, right?
Okay, so you're on holes 49 and 50 now. With the results of 47 being so impressive, does that guide you to maybe trying to test this potassic zone a bit deeper where you're seeing these higher grades? Or do you want to keep stepping out for the meantime?
Get rich or go. What was it? Get or die trying. What's the saying?
Yeah.
No,
Get rich or die trying.
Yeah, there we go. You're from Miami. You're from Florida. You get it. So, we actually had a chat about that, and what we decided, there is a big area to the northwest of hole 47 from the same pad. That's kind of it's nothing shows up, so it's a dead section of the current resource. So we wanted to try and do both. We want to try to go after this new phase of mineralization that we found, but also saying, hey, fill in this big hole that we have currently in the resource. So that's what we're going to be going after. But I think we're going to have a couple more holes. And then 48, which is a really big step out. It's about 600 meters from the existing drilling out to the east. We're also going to turn it to learn more about the geology within that area, right? To make to be the basis for the next big step out to the east, right, of resource.
Okay, and then final question.
I would even go as far as that 48 is even outside of the exploration target area, right? So we have an exploration target of saying where we think we can get the next 1.7 to 1 point, or not, or total of 1.7, 1.9 million tons. And this is even outside of it. So to extend that even further. So we're thinking bigger. We want to be able to demonstrate clearly that this project can get big, right? And I heard a term that I really like, that one of the reasons of the traction, I can't remember who said it, but one of the geologists said this is cool because this is a generational project. This is what the big boys are looking for. They want generational projects. So you're to be able to demonstrate, you got a great starter project. We've talked about that, call it about 200 million tons. You can grow it to that 1.5 million tons or 150,000 tons per day, but it's got so much areas to continue to grow that you would expect it to be a project that could run for 100 years. And that's what Mocoa looks like, is starting to look like.
So a couple months ago, you put out news showing some other more, regional targets across the property package. I spoke with Edwin about that a little bit, I believe back in May, but I'm just curious, any plans to move a rig over to test some of these completely wide open areas?
We're talking about it. We're discussing it. And I would say that my significant criteria is, I believe, that people are going to start figuring out Colombia a whole lot better, right? That Colombia is going to get re-rated. I think that copper has not been the equity of choice yet, which is also a little bit of what we're facing. But we obviously believe, and others that back us, including Frank Justra, right, that we understand the value of this project, but we know that market can be inefficient, right? Hopefully not longer than we can be solvent. But we have to focus that I got a time game, which is the new presidency, and we want to be aggressive, et cetera. But we also know that we at least have a certain amount of money that will get us a significant amount of runway, and that we obviously strongly believe we'll start seeing that re-rating. Because I'd really like to be able to test some of those additional targets with the third rig, right? Because we got plenty of work for the 2 rigs. So a third rig would help to test some of these other additional targets, which I also think would be something we have to do and need to do. But I want to do it from a position of strength, right? So it's all these little building blocks as we're trying to navigate this very large ship. But obviously, we're extremely excited about getting this raise done because it gives us the ability to work to build the momentum behind the project.
Okay, so for the final question, Ian, the copper market, we have seen a powerful breakout above $5 a pound in COMEX copper in the last month or so. We almost tapped $6 a pound, which is kind of unbelievable, quite frankly. If you look at the longer term charts, like the monthly, the quarterly copper charts, this is just incredibly wildly bullish from a technical standpoint. Why are the equities like Freeport, Southern Copper not really tracking this copper move? Is it due to the fact it's mainly driven by tariffs, markets thinking it's taco time again for Trump, he's going to walk this back? What's your take on the copper market here in 2025?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing if you look at the chart of Freeport McMoRan over a year, and I think it's flat. Like it's flat. Like it's got its little bit of things up and down, but it's flat. Despite that copper, let me actually just bring it up. At least for the COMEX copper, over a year is up 40%, right? On top of that, of course, that's COMEX, which we do have to explain a little bit. But the majority of the copper from Freeport McMoRan is being sold in the United States. So they're actually being able to take a serious advantage of that additional price. They will actually see that in their pocket. But that's the first thing we have to understand is the difference between LME and COMEX, that there is a price difference between the LME and COMEX, because if there any sort of tariff, right, that makes copper in the United States before the tariff or after tariff more expensive, right? So if it's $1 in in Europe, and then it comes to the United States, and there's a 50% tariff. You have to pay $1.50 when it comes into the United States to buy that same copper. So there's some a little bit of arbitrage and hedging going on in the copper price, right? But there is something that definitely 100,000% that market doesn't understand yet, right? And that is, if you put it's because people really haven't understood, and because it's a globalized world, what copper actually is and how it actually works, right? It would be a tariff on refined copper, which means something coming out of a smelter or refinery, right? It's a finished good, 100% copper. Now, I hope we're smart enough that if we put a 50% tariff on copper, refined copper, we put a 75% tariff on the electric motor. Otherwise, you're really just going to say, well, why would you do it here if it costs me more for the raw material, right? I'll just build my
Yeah,
electric
that's a
motor
really good
somewhere else,
point.
right?
That's a really good point.
But I don't think, especially after going to Rick Rule's conference and talking, and you were there were some amazing, extremely smart people that had a little bit of look underneath that velvet curtain, that there's a lot of really smart people behind this. So I think that they at least get that part. But it's on refined copper, right? Which means what you're really trying to incentivize is smelting capacity, smelting and refining capacity, which if I was the United States, that's what I would do too. Right? That's what China did. China doesn't have a bunch of copper mines. China has a bunch of copper smelters. Okay. But what does that mean to the equities? That means that he who has the equity is in the best position, because as you break up a globalized production chain and you build more smelting capacity, right? That means they need new sources for that material. And we're already at the point today where, and I don't know if people really understand this, that we've gotten to the point where smelters are paying for the concentrate. So in the past, it was, I have a mine, I produce a concentrate of all these minerals that I could point out on the core, the chalcopyrites and all these other names that we hear, that goes to a smelter, and they break the irons and the coppers and the sulfurs, and they bring out, and here's your copper, right? That's done through smelting. Right. And normally I pay you to smelt my concentrate. So I have $1 worth of copper, right? Oh, I'm going to charge you 10 cents. And then I'm going to give you a 95% recovery. And that's called the treatment charge, by the way, the 50 cents or whatever, or the 5 cents or whatever number I just threw out there. Right. And then they pay you. Okay. And so for that $1 worth of copper, you end up getting, and it's not normally bad in copper, 90 cents or something, right? Of what was the contained value, because I'm charging you for the service. Today, they're paying for concentrate. That treatment charge is, okay, it's worth $1 plus I'll give you 10 cents.
That's incredible.
Right?
I think that's the first time I can recall that ever happening.
I've never seen it ever. And the crazy part is, I think some of even the long-term contracts were zero. They negotiated a zero treatment charge. It's unbelievable, right? And so that some guys on the spot have been seeing negative, where they're saying, we need concentrate so bad, we're willing to go buy it on the market. And that's what you're competing with as the United States buys that. So they're going to be competing for concentrate. What are you competing for? You're competing for offtake. So the number one winner in a tariff type situation is the underlying equity, because you get a premium to have your material, right? And so your price of your copper, normally you see, like when I love it when I see a zinc equivalent calculation, or using zinc as equivalent basis just based on recoveries, when I know the smelters are only going to pay you 50, 60, 70% sometimes for your valuation, right? And so I look at the zinc price, and I know as a mine, I don't really get that. In this case, you look at the copper price, and you actually could even be getting a better price, right? So you're going to be overvalued just for the ability to have your offtake. And why am I smiling so much? Because there's no projects either. They're not there.
Yeah, there's
right?
no projects
If you take
of real scale. Yeah.
Of real scale, or any fathomable ability to get produced. Like if you look at Resolution, it's a great one, which I think is the second or third largest copper project in the world. Even if you got all the green lights today, how long would it be before you saw production coming out of Resolution?
6 years.
7 years? 6 years? Right? So that we have a beautiful deposit that's near surface that could start off at a reasonable size because you have a high grade portion in a country that is a major non-NATO ally of the United States, same as Australia or Japan, right? In a country that's putting up tariffs to incentivize smelting. Yeah, I think that eventually we realize how valuable the Mocoa project is going to be.
Yeah, and with the resolution, 6 years is the best case, Ian. And we know in mining, the best case often doesn't happen.
No.
It's probably more
No,
like
and
7,
literally
8.
even BHP, which I invite everybody to, I think it's one of the best analysis. It's a copper, our future, how our
Yeah.
future depends on copper. I can't remember the name. It's something like that, right? It's one of their outlook reports. It's absolutely so well done because you hear so much noise about copper, right? And they're more sensical and more conservative, I think, in the way they look at it. And it's coming from a mining company that actually has to do it. And they're still saying you need 1 million more tons of capacity every year. That's a 20 million ton project a year, right? Because copper mines are normally 20-year projects, right? That's basically the 10 largest copper projects in the world on the ground, recovering 100% of them over 20 years, one build a year. It's not happening. Like there's no way. They just don't exist.
Filo del Sol, Pebble, all of those are
KSM
or KSM, massive capex. We're talking capex in the $8 to $10 billion range minimum, and a couple of them have major permitting challenges. It looks like Resolution is finally getting over the hurdle of its 25-year permitting challenges. Fingers crossed. But the theme is big copper is really expensive and takes a really long time.
Well, one of the reasons why you've seen such a drought was there was a lot of focus on brownfields for the exact reason that you're saying, that greenfields production or construction was so expensive and so difficult that it was better just to expand, even if you're going lower grade and it's more marginal and et cetera. It was still lower risk and lower cost to do brownfields expansions. And the same BHP report points it out, right? That's been crossed. Right? That brownfields is now more expensive than even greenfields. And so here's another one. I think very strongly, by the way, that Mirador was the lowest cost greenfields new copper project in the world, right? In terms of dollars per pound of copper produced, right? So it was it was the most low cost and total capital, right? The reason I'm saying I'm not 100% sure because it's with two Chinese SOE, it's not always the most transparent information. But I remember we had to build we had to build a power line, 110 kVA power line. We had to upgrade some bridges. We had to build a 120 meter bridge. We had to build a port, not a port, but our warehouse facility at a port. Which was Cirrus Pilots and Machala. But the big one was obviously a power line, right? And now they're saying, and we also even fully permitted that power project that, I don't know if you ever heard in the news, it's about 110 megawatts, if I remember correctly, Run of River power project that was also associated with the project that wasn't built, but now the government is asking them to build it. But the cool thing about in Mocoa is, guess what? We already have a port. We already have a port that has capacity to do bulk shipping. We have a road that gets there, right? And we have two 220 kVA power lines that run by the project, right? Mocoa will be low cost also, right? So it will be extremely attractive, right? And we know it. It's just market doesn't. I don't think it's come around yet to understand how valuable Mocoa is going to be. But it is going to be, it's one of the rare gems that exist. And I think maybe the catalyst will be copper starting to get more excitement around copper equities, or people starting to realize what's going to be happening in Colombia, or that we keep on putting out drill results when people keep throwing, saying that these are the last holes this company is ever doing, right? But obviously they're not the last holes we're ever doing, right? So we continue to put drill holes. And again, if you want, we've done it before. We know what we're doing, and we're putting this project on a pathway to become a mine.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap it up, Ian, and well done on hole 47. I have a feeling if you keep drilling more holes like hole 47, eventually investors will get it. Thank you for your time.
Thanks. I'm also hoping the day when market realizes that 0.7%, 100 meters under the surface is better than 1%, 900 meters deep, right? For those same reasons. So we look forward to much better times.
You might be able to argue that 0.4% copper, that's 100 meters
Easy.
deep, is better than 1% at 1,000 meters.
Easy. Just put a capex and opex costs on how to get that out, right? And it becomes easy.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, Rob, it's always a pleasure.
Cheers.
Cheers.